Yeah, and look, I think it goes back to that question of when would you recommend glasses? If I find someone has certain types of, strong allergies, problems with dry eye, those sorts of things, any sort of eyelid anomalies that may not work well with contact lenses, then I want to have a careful look at that. Some of those things we can actually deal with through drops or dry eye treatments, so it may not be a kind of a line in the sand for them, but certainly something we want to consider is, does the person sort of physiology stack up to allowing contact lens wear even on a part-time basis being comfortable and possible for them. We would do measurements on eye shape. So we use what we call a corneal topographer, which gives you kind of a very detailed map of the curvature across the whole cornea. So we can kind of get a sense of, the size of the eye, the shape of the eye, what sort of lenses are likely to fit. And if we're doing more complex contact lens fitting, we really, really use a lot of that information to help us design the initial lenses. And it's a critical part of fitting something like ortho-K. So topography is generally a good part of that. Obviously, we're going to want to know what their prescription is. And part of it also is, a detailed discussion around what are you going to use these for? Do you only need distance vision? Do you need to be able to read them at the same time? Are you going to be using them just for sport, or are there other activities or things in your life where you're going to be using them? So that'll start to kind of work out which way we might head in the balance of things.
And for people who do have really like complex eye conditions, whether that be keratoconus or severe dry eye, there are other specialist contact lenses, aren't there, like scleral lenses, which have come a long way. Can you
absolutely and
explain what those are?
Yeah, so a scleral lens is a type of hard lens. So hard lenses have been around for literally a century, and they, in their traditional smaller designs, they have a little bit more eyelid awareness, so it requires a bit more dedication to getting used to them. But because you're providing a very good, clean surface that keeps its shape while you're wearing it, that's a very good optical surface. So if your cornea is more oddly shaped, the contact lens in front with the tiers in between creates this nice round optical surface that improves clarity. Now, if we do it with a scleral lens, it's almost as big, or if not bigger, than a soft lens. They become very, very stable. And the comfort is actually fairly close to a soft lens. Once you start wearing them, it's not the same as the old smaller RGPs, which have a place, but do require a bit more commitment getting used to. So the scleral wraps right over the cornea and creates a brand new optical surface to look through. So great for irregularities. You're trapping a wet surface, so for some people with dry eye, it can add that sort of barrier for using it for short periods, for sure.
Well, so you mentioned some different types of contact lenses. So maybe this is a good segue to my next question, which is how do you match the right contact lens to someone's sport or their training environment? Like what sort of questions do you ask when you go through that fitting process and talk about someone's lifestyle needs?
Yeah, look, generally we're going to lean towards a soft lens of some sort most of the time. There's sort of lots of different ones available, covering a wide range of prescriptions in terms of whether you just need a spherical lens just to correct some hyperopia or myopia, whether you need a toric lens to correct astigmatism. If someone's in really, really dusty environments, we might lean into more of the sort of mini scleral, but usually a soft lens is well tolerated in those sorts of situations, particularly if you're wearing sunglasses or some other sort of protection over the top. So generally speaking, we lean towards single-use lenses a lot of the time, regardless of whether you're a full-time wearer or a part-time wearer, because they have the convenience of you getting a fresh lens every day. So it's the most comfortable way of wearing the lens. They have the least complications. Occasionally you might hit a limit somewhere where the prescription is just not available in a one-day lens, so we might move to the other forms of frequent replacement, which I'll discuss in a second. The advantage of a one day for part-time wear is probably even further, because you don't have to keep your lens that you've just worn in solution. You don't have to clean it. You don't have to worry about how many times have I worn it, how long has it been since I wore that lens. So if you're considering wearing contact lenses just for sport and you're not going to be wearing them during the week, then a one-day lens is ideal, assuming that it's going to sort of perform well. So if you're a full-time wearer and maybe the cost of one days is, you're looking for something a bit more economical, or like I said, we're heading down the path of having a lens that we're needing more parameters. We need a different prescription that a one day just can't handle. Then we're moving into, say, maybe a fortnightly lens, or what we call a 2-weekly lens, or more commonly a monthly lens. So what we mean by those is that if you were wearing them each day, you take them out each night, clean them, put them in a cleaning solution, what we call a multi-purpose solution. And at the end of a fortnight for a 2-weekly lens, or at the end of a month for a monthly lens, you're throwing them out, and then the next day you're opening up a brand new set of lenses.
You mentioned that there are different types of one-day lenses. I've heard that, I think there's one brand, might be Johnson & Johnson. They've got new contact lenses with new type of contact lenses with technology built in that makes them much more comfortable for people who suffer from dry eye. So I think like the whole technology behind contact lenses has really improved a lot in the last decade, hasn't it?
Yeah, and you'll find that across all the manufacturers. So, 𝗵𝗿𝗺𝗀𝗃, Johnson & Johnson, probably the main players, Bosch and Lom in there. So they're all creating ways of making the lenses more comfortable. I wear a lens called the Natural View, and they made a change to even just the edge profile and how they coat the lens. It made a huge difference in the comfort of the lens. And so all the manufacturers are finding ways of making contact lens wear more comfortable and achievable for people.
All right. So what about swimming then? Swimming and other water activities. So why is it why is it something where we have to consider the risks?
Yeah, and when I'm talking to patients about contact lens wear, your top two sources of infections are water, and the second one is cases. If we just eliminate the case story out of the way at the moment, if you're wearing a lens that needs to be cleaned, then we recommend that you replace the case every time you open a new bottle of multi-purpose solution, because that helps control the number two source of eye infections. So the number one is water. In particular, 𝗵𝗿𝗺𝗃𝗃. And if you have someone swim in water with their contact lenses and take the contact lenses out, and you measure them, then you find bacteria like 𝗵𝗿𝗺𝗃𝗃 stuck to the lens. And so that's where the concern is. The increased risk of getting an eye infection is the contact lens actually holds on to the bacteria against the eye, so it creates more opportunity for an infection to occur. And infections are quite rare, but if you get one from 𝗵𝗿𝗺𝗃𝗃, it can be quite nasty. So this is where the concern is. So if you, the first step is, do you really need to be wearing contact lenses while you're in that water activity, particularly if there are, things like prescription goggles being available and those sorts of things. And then we step it down from there. So this is what I want to be sort of careful, is that the advice is don't wear them while you're doing water activities. But if you absolutely must, then wearing goggles over the top adds a reasonable degree of protection. If you happen to get exposed to water, then removing them after you've done the water activity. Don't continue to wear them for hours afterwards. Or if there are a lens that you're frequently replacing, make sure you do a thorough clean with a good rubbing step, and let them soak. A lot of my one-day users, if they wear them in a water situation, will just throw them out. If you're wearing a spherical one-day contact lens, it's sort of about half a cup of coffee in terms of cost for a pair of lenses. So, if you like your water activity and you're going to be wearing contact lenses, then the next best thing to not wearing them at all is throwing them out as soon as you've done.
And I guess Ortho-K is another really good option, isn't it, for people who are in and out of the water a lot?
Absolutely. And, as a caveat to anyone who spends time in the water, whether you're wearing contact lenses or not, I mean, it's not a bad idea to put some lubricant in after you get out of the water, just to make sure you flushed out any bacteria in there. The advantage of Ortho-K is that it's a contact lens that you only wear while you sleep. So it puts some emphasis on some hygiene in that wearing sort of situation, because you are sleeping in them. So you need to be careful around case hygiene, not introducing water, washing your hands. But for water activities, with an Ortho-K lens, you're basically putting the lens on the eye, going to sleep. It's using tear forces to gently reshape the cornea into a shape that allows you to see when you take the lens off, and you can see all day. So then you can do your water activities and not be worried about having something on the eye that's going to attract and have bacteria stick to it.